introductions from our panellists.
Hi everybody, it's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Alison and I'm from the Alsama Project. This Alsama Project is an NGO based in refugee camps in Lebanon, providing education centres, social enterprises and sports hub for refugee students.
Thank you. And when I was calling for Richard, actually what I didn't understand is Alison is actually representing Richard, so thank you for clearing that. And
my name is Daisy Van Leeuwenhill. It's lovely to meet everyone. Ahlan wa sahlan. I am here representing Squash Dreamers, which is an organisation based in Amman, Jordan, dedicated to empowering young refugee and underprivileged girls through sports and education. So we work providing a long-term intensive programme to 55 young girls based in Amman, but who are from Syria, Sudan, Iraq, Somalia, Palestine, Jordan. And we provide an intensive program providing them with education. So we do English, we do one-to-one academics in all school subjects. We provide sport and squash, very similar to the way that Alsama provides cricket. And we provide well-being support as well, because obviously if you want to be able to study well, do well, go on to education, we need to make sure that we're supporting girls in their emotional well-being alongside everything else.
Perfect, perfect. And I suppose the subject matter is forcibly displaced people. What impact are we seeing, and how big of a problem is this, and how should we worry about it? How worried should we be about this? So, we see framed in the news a lot, especially in the UK, about immigration and, everything else and challenges. But what's the reality and what you're seeing in the great work that you're doing?
So I have actually been at Squash Dreamers for the past 3 years, and unfortunately the situation in Jordan continues to get more and more difficult. We're working with a lot of people who've been refugees in Jordan for a long time, working with people who are living outside of refugee camps. Therefore, they're not provided with exactly the same support that other people are if they're inside the refugee camps. In Jordan, there's quite a niche situation. I know it's really, really difficult in Lebanon as well, but the girls that we work with living in an area of East Amman go to school on a shift system. So they either go to school in the morning or they go to school in the afternoon. And this can be for as little as 2 to 3 hours a day in classes of up to 60 students. Now, this is just obviously on the education side, and we see a lot of other issues kind of affecting displaced people in Jordan. But just on that level, there's this terrible figure that comes out from UNHCR quite often, that 40% of young Syrian girls in Jordan over the age of 12 are out of school. So a lot of young people drop out of school in Jordan just because we don't have the correct resources to support people. Every day when I go into work, we are trying to assess the needs of the young people that we work with. We already provide quite an intensive program, but it's really important for us to listen to the community. Over the past 3 years, we have gone from just providing sports and English support to try and help girls go on to university to needing to provide support in all academic areas. Not just that, but more recently, we had an issue with girls who were coming to us who would faint as soon as they arrived at their sessions. They'd be in their English class and they'd pass out. And we were wondering what was going on with all these children who were fainting, and worked out that about 95% of the girls coming to Squash Dreamers weren't eating at all before they came, and our sessions start at 5 p.m. And so we then had to respond to this by providing, obviously, snacks as soon as everyone arrives and then dinner before everyone leaves. But it's a consistently changing situation in Jordan, I mean, even more so in Lebanon at the moment. And I think it's really important for programs that are offering support, especially education support, to ensure that they're not just offering kind of in the classroom math, science, English, but they're also offering kind of this more holistic support to ensure that students are going on to thrive. And, for us, food and emotional support has been a really big part of that.
Brilliant, that sounds amazing, thank you. Can you hear me on my mic?
Yeah, can you?
Okay, perfect,
Good.
Thank you. Yeah, so of course the situation in Lebanon is really difficult at the moment, but prior to this, it was always difficult for refugees. In Lebanon, a lot of refugees aren't recognised, so a lot of people are there illegally, which means they can't access education. So the Alsama Project sets up education centres. Currently we have 4, and we educate 880 students at the moment. We tend to gain students who are like 12 years old and they're illiterate, they can't speak any English, they can't read, they can't write. And we created an innovative curriculum which in 6 years, by the time the children are 18, they're ready for university. We currently have a project called the G12, which is a social enterprise where we're creating an exam. So these students qualifications can be recognised so they can go to university. And we're partnered with Cambridge University and the University of Leicester on this project. And of course, at the moment, a lot of things are changing in Lebanon. We describe Alsama at the moment as currently under fire. Despite this, Alsama is stronger than ever. At the moment, we're the only education facility still running in Lebanon. All government schools are closed. And the displaced students are constantly given up on, but we're not allowing that to happen. We're renting rooms in safe places of Beirut, which is North Beirut, to continue their education. We're looking for Wi-Fi. We're trying to get all students with phones so they continue to learn online. A lot of the students have had to flee Lebanon to Syria, which of course is really dangerous still. It's not much safer than Lebanon. The young men, if they get found that they're there, will be conscripted into the army. Students there aren't allowed to learn. So at the moment, our mission is to get as many of our students back to Lebanon, rent safe rooms for them so they can continue their education. In 18 months, we want these students to go to university, and we will not give up on them.
Wow. That's just so amazing and inspirational. And, you know, coming back to what I was talking about, the theme of resilience, and, you know, for these students to be going through what they're going through and still showing up is that type of resilience that I was talking about. It's kind of like, you know, how do you go about changing it? But what I find really interesting is how you've reframed what we consider to be education. Because often in the West, we think of education, which is you go to school, you learn a subject, maths, English, science, whatever it is. But actually, you're having a much more holistic approach because you've got to find a safe space. You've got to feed, you know, because if you're hungry and you're starving, your brain's not going to be working properly. So, you know, how do you tackle that problem? Because it is a multifaceted problem. So how do you actually go about doing that? Do you work with partners? Do you expand the scope of your work? What is it that you do?
So I think what's really important, kind of across the board, and I know that this will be super important at Alsama as well, is that every organisation that is working in Jordan or in Lebanon or anywhere else around the world working with displaced people, you have got to focus on the community and always return to the community on what it is that they need. How many times have I seen projects be implemented in Jordan, which are fantastic for 6 weeks, and it gives everyone a notebook, but nobody's got a pen to write in their notebook, right? And so I think what's super important kind of across the board at Alsama and at Squash Streamers is that we're returning to the community to go, okay, we want to be able to support you in education, in higher education, but really across the board what we want to do is give you that choice. And that's always what's been really important to us, and in what you're talking about right now, it's that choice to be able to go on to higher education. I remember when I graduated from secondary school and I actually studied at the University of Exeter, and it was, you know, it was difficult to get in, but I had that choice to go to university, right? The young people that I work with at the moment, before I came here, I told them that I was leaving Jordan to go to America and come to the UK and to talk a little bit about Squash Streamers. And the girl's response to that was, hold on, why do people in England and America care about what happens to us? Often people here don't even care about what happens to us. And somehow there's this moment of change where you speak to one of these young people, or they're provided with this support that they need, where they go, oh, hold on, I'm totally capable of doing this. And they realize that they have a choice as to what happens in the future. And they realize that they have a choice to go on to education. I know we're speaking about different types of education right now. And of course, you know, it would be amazing if every single child at Squash Streamers and at Alsama went on to university. But that's not right for everybody. I think that the most important way to look at it is education is obviously lifelong. And education is about having that choice. One of the girls, again, before I left, I said to her, what's the most important thing that you've learned at Squash Streamers? And she told me the most important thing that I have learned at Squash Streamers is that I need to always be working on myself, and that I can't rely on everyone else to provide everything for me, but I can rely on myself to always work hard to be the best person I can possibly be. And so we can talk about all sorts of different types of education. You know, we provide English and science and math and higher education and scholarships. But, you know, at its essence, education is that you have that choice, and is that you're continually working on yourself to be the best version of yourself.
Love that.
I love the stories, they're amazing. We definitely agree at Alsama, it's definitely all about having the choice. So I think I mentioned the G12 project before, which is an exam for refugees so they can enter higher education facilities. So how that originally came about was our students were like, great, you've given this amazing education, 6 years of it, we can read, we can write, we have all of these skills, but what next? How are they going to recognize our skills? Like, universities don't know what Alsama is. So we're going to tackle this 2 ways. Firstly, we're currently working to accredit our schools, so the curriculum is recognised. Secondly, we've created this G12 exam. We've partnered with Cambridge Assessments, and we're looking to accredit and beta test this exam. Our first students will take this exam in 2024. We created that because they asked for it. And that's so important. We always look what our students want and what they need. And also in terms of, yes, education, university is not right for everyone. We continue to educate people in professionalism. How can we act in different situations? How do people act in jobs? So a lot of these students, they don't know any of these things. They've not had an opportunity to work in professional environments or see and how do people work in a team, all of these amazing things. And that's also in cricket. We play a lot of cricket, like you play a lot of squash. We have loads of students who really enjoy that and want to coach cricket, so we put them on qualifications to do that. So there's plenty of opportunities at Alsama. We always check with the students, ask what they want, and we do what they want, similar to you guys.
I'll add to that a little bit as well, actually. And funnily enough, I know a lot about Alsama before, so this is great for me because I get to sit alongside you and listen to everything that's great that you guys do too. And what we're talking about here is obviously education is so broad and education is so holistic. One of the things that we also realised, I had a fantastic conversation with one of the girls who came in and was telling me that she was feeling angry and she didn't know what to do. And so we had a quick chat about the fact she could count to 10 and go outside and take a breather and go on a walk or listen to music or this kind of thing. And we recognised that actually there was a lot of emotional education that was missing. I mean, you don't always get that at schools kind of anywhere, but you definitely don't get this at these very overstretched schools that we've got in Jordan. And so we actually piloted over the summer this program, which was mental health and well-being workshops. And what we started to do was we were working with girls on general emotional well-being, talking about boundaries, talking about how to identify different emotions and how to work through those emotions. We started talking about how to be safe online. We were talking about menstrual health, about health in general. We had some great partners. We were able to provide toothbrushes and soap and all this fantastic stuff. But kind of even at a really base level, you know, like I said, look at education as so many different things, as you know, this incredible G12 exam that you guys have created, all the way down to the education and the support that you have for, okay, how do I do addition, but you know, how do I brush my teeth, or how do I identify anger or happiness? Because if you don't have this background and you don't have this support, this amazing family that I know Alsama has created, and we also have at Squash Streamers, how do you go on? Who do you have to tell you that you can do it? Who do you have to support you in kind of developing who you are emotionally?
Yeah, that's amazing. And I just want to say to the audience that we're going to be opening up the questions to you soon. So just think about any questions that you might have for our panelists today. You know, one of the things that I love that you're saying, which is the student-centric type of focus. You know, it's not a case of we're going to come in and we're going to save the day and we're going to educate you the way that we want to educate you. You're actually putting the students at the center of what it is that you're doing and making sure that their needs are being met. This might be actually the last question for me before I hand over to the audience. You know, I talked about resilience earlier, and what you actually described there, Daisy, is that kind of, you know, what is that holistic well-being that we have, that emotional regulation. How do we get the right mindset? How do we continue to get up when we don't feel like it? And, you know, all the rest of the things. What are the rituals, habits, and practices that we can put in place? And I'm curious about that for you both, because, you know, what inspired you to get involved in this? What's your personal story, and how do you maintain and keep going forward? Because, you know, the work that you're doing is amazing, but I know it's not going to be easy. So what is it that speaks to you, and what is it that you can share that, you know, for the audience, if they want to get involved in something like that, whether it's your project or another project they might want to consider?
Okay. So interestingly enough, I actually got involved with squash streamers while I was studying Arabic in Jordan in 2019. I stumbled across them because I was looking for a way to give back while I was in Amman, and started teaching English, and it was great fun, and we played head, shoulders, knees and toes and hokey cokey every day, so I had a great time. And then I came back to the UK and had really had this incredible experience, seeing how resilient and how much these girls wanted to learn and play, despite the very difficult circumstances they were in. So I continued to volunteer and fundraise for them online, and I actually went back to be executive director of Squash Streamers in September of 2023. So I had a bit of a strange path in. And we have developed the organisation a lot since then. We were struggling a lot post-COVID, and we had 7 girls, now we have 55, and we just used to do squash, now we do everything, it seems. I think your question is a really important one, because I think that for so many people working, especially in community organisations, and especially at the moment, it can be super harrowing. It's really hard. I recognise, I've been in America, I've been here, and I take a breath and go, oh my goodness, I feel like I see so much trauma every single day. And I only recognise that when you're kind of outside of that space. And so for me, I really, really, really care about what I do, and I hope that comes across as I speak about it. The reason I'm here is because I love talking to people about the girls. I have the privilege with a British passport to be able to come to the UK and to share these stories. These girls don't have that privilege. And so I feel kind of a lot of pressure with being the steward of their stories, being here and telling you all about it. And speaking of which, I will tell a little story which tells a little bit into why I'm able to continue to be resilient and continue to do my work at Squash Streamers. We have this amazing partnership with a school in the UK. And last year we had 3 girls who were offered full scholarships to come and study in the UK over the summer. This year we had 7, which was amazing. But you feel like scholarship's the most difficult part, and then you have to go and get passports, which is very difficult. And we queued up outside the Syrian embassy in Amman from 5:30 in the morning to get passports. And I was stood there with the 2 fathers of the 2 girls, and we'd been waiting. It got to 9 o'clock. We got to the front of the queue, and we handed out all these million pieces of paper. And the guy looked at them and he goes, "Oh, no. You need something called khiraj qaid. You don't have it. You can't get a passport." And we worked out that we were going to need to get this piece of paper from Syria, and I couldn't go, and the dads couldn't go, and we didn't know what we were going to do. And one of the fathers pulled me to the side, a guy called Abu Hussein. And Abu Hussein said to me, "Daisy, I now understand that the rest of my life, I will be here in Jordan. I will wake up every single day more tired than the last one. I will go to work, but never really be able to take a day off, because if I do take a day off, I'll probably lose my job. I will be consistently concerned that I will never be able to provide for my family, and I will forever be in this country as a refugee. But I refuse to let that be the future for my daughter. So we better sort out this passport." And things got more difficult before they got easier, and things consistently are getting more and more difficult. And it's so hard in Lebanon at the moment, and things are really tough in Jordan as well. But I hold on to that resilience that after everything that Abu Hussein had gone through, that he was able to hold on to. And I look every single day at these incredible girls who, no matter what, continue to strive for greatness and say to me, "You know what, even if I can't get to university, the most important thing is that I continue to work on myself." So that's a little bit of how I hold on to hope, which I think is so important with working with young people. And if there is anyone who's interested in hearing more about Squash Streamers, feel free to come over and talk to me. If somebody wants to get involved through any way, or kind of doing an internship or learning more or anything like that, you're welcome to come and talk to me, or you can give us a Google, and you're welcome to send me an email. But I think the biggest thing that I want everyone to take away, and obviously I know that there are questions, is that the young people that I work with and that are at Alsama are so incredibly resilient. And for so many of these young people that I work with, their dream is to go on to higher education. And it's our job to remove those boundaries, because when these children are able to go on to higher education, they are just blossoming.
Amazing. I love your stories on resilience, and resilience drives me at Alsama as well. So I'd love to tell you about one of our students, Maram. So her and her family have fled back to Syria to escape the war in Lebanon. And she obviously does all of her work in the day. And as I said before, Syria is not a safe place to learn. They have to hide their books. But every evening, she sits under the tree and she does her work. She sends messages to her teacher. She makes sure she's up to date with all of her work. She's always asking, what next? What do I need to do now? When I was touring the UK, going around universities and talking to Cambridge Assessment, she was literally asking me every day, what's happening with the university? So many people in that situation would just give up and be like, oh, be overcome with all of the stress of the war and fleeing. But these students keep going. They're so resilient. It makes me want to do so much more for them. So I'm currently a student, so I spent 6 months interning at Alsama. And once I graduate, I hope to go back. And my project there was working on the G12++, which is the exam for refugees. I want to go back and continue to make sure that exam is accredited, ready for our first cohort of students to take this exam and get to university. After that, we want to keep scaling beyond Alsama to over 50,000 refugee students in 2040. And I want to just keep going with this project. I'm motivated by the students. We have to remember it's always for them first, like at Squash Dreamers. And yes, any of you today, I'm so happy to chat later, take any questions. We're currently looking for interns like what I did. So it's 6 months you spend at the refugee camps in Beirut, getting to know the students, making real change. You can find more about the job on LinkedIn, it's posted there, and we're currently accepting applications. It'd be lovely for any of you to join us.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And I'd like to open the panel to questions. Do we have any questions at this moment? Perfect, thank you. Thank you so much, so inspirational.
Thank you very much. So the question I wanted to ask is that obviously both of you have seen these sort of really difficult places to be with Lebanon and Jordan. And obviously these children have been like very war-torn, very conflict-ridden places. How do you sort of deal with like the sort of attitudes they might acquire in terms of, you know, being surrounded by such, you know, war and damage, you know, most of their lives? How does that affect things, and, you know, how do you approach that instead of, you know, preventing it from growing into something worse?
So I think thank you for your question, first off. I think the most important thing to remember is that despite everything, these young people are still young people, right? And what I always really struggle with is that sometimes organizations provide what is needed and that's it. So as long as everyone is going to school, going to government school, and has enough food, then you know, that's enough. You know what I mean? And nobody has ever given that opportunity to thrive. Nobody has ever given the opportunity to play sport at a high level. Nobody's ever given that opportunity to go on to higher education. And so I think that, to begin with, is really, really important, because it's not about going, okay, this person is a refugee. It's about going, this is a young person who wants to thrive. They want to play sport. They want to do painting. They want to, you know, just join in with everything. There is a lot of really complex issues that we face, both in terms of with the families and with the students, and the impact that war has had on them. Now, I mentioned a little bit on our wellbeing and mental health program. I'm actually the only foreign member of staff at Squash Dreamers. The rest of our staff are from Syria, Gaza, Palestine, and Jordan. And so there is that kind of collective experience that a lot of people have had there. We do a lot of emotional support for a lot of these girls. And we talk about it. We talk about it and we go, you know what, that's really, really tricky. If we have girls who have kind of more severe mental health issues as a result of the trauma that they face, then we do have ways to kind of support them with therapy. But the biggest thing, I think, is more than anything else, they know that they have a family, and they know that they have a collective of people who won't leave them no matter what. They know that they can talk to us and go, you know, okay, for example, recently we've had missiles flying over in Jordan, right? And the other week the building was shaking with these missiles that were flying overhead, and all the children were really scared. But they knew that they had a collective of people around them to go, it's okay, don't worry, you're going to be totally fine, we're not going to leave you. And the girls that we have, they start at 8 and they finish at 18. So they've had 10 years of support, so that they know, you know, sometimes there are really difficult, you know, mental health problems that, you know, I personally or members of our staff can't deal with. But they know that no matter what, that they have people there who care about them and who will support them to overcome those issues and to go on to be happy.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love your approach, and we're pretty similar. It's all about not giving up on these students. So our students in Lebanon, they've been given up on so many times. That's why it's so important at the moment. We're raising emergency funding to ensure we can continue their education. We're not going to leave them. And similar to Squash Dreamers, we have a psychologist who's trained to deal with all of their different emotions. And it's amazing, actually. In July, I was at an art show in the refugee camp in Beirut. And it was amazing to see how the students express their difficulties. So one picture, I asked the student, please explain this to me. And she was like, I really struggle with insomnia. And so it was a picture of a brain, their face, and a brain with anger. And she was like, I just can't sleep because of everything I remember. I'm just so angry. And they're able to express themselves and talk about their feelings. And that's so important. And it's just everyone being there, the psychologist regularly being there, education, knowing they can learn about these things and move on is so powerful. So many of our students have amazing ambitions, and all of them. So Mariam, the girl I was discussing before, she wants to study finance so she can help rebuild Syria. All of our students want to do medicine so they can help people that they've seen that are injured. And they're so resilient. And all we need to do is continue to be there and not give up. So many organisations have given up. Alsama is the only school still running in Lebanon. Everyone else has closed and given up on their students. We will never do that, even if that means teaching them remotely or having to rent rooms and rent screens to teach them. We'll never give up on them. And I think that's the most important thing for students, similar to Squash Dreamers, is just being there. It's amazing. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. And, yep.
Battling for the microphone. Thank you both so much. And I really appreciate the student-centric view, but I wonder also about turning the telescope maybe slightly the other way. Could you tell me a little bit more about what your staff and volunteers need to be able to maintain this level of support? This is difficult work. I've lived and worked in the region. I know exactly some things that you're talking about, but this is very difficult work for them, and maybe what can we do to help that as well?
Yeah, it's super difficult, especially at the moment. So most of our staff are from Lebanon, from the camp, Syria themselves. And it's very difficult. So a lot of them are having to flee. And if we can't set up these online schools, unfortunately, we can't keep their jobs. So it's so important alongside our staff for us to keep getting this emergency funding so we can set up these online classes and keep our staff and their students in their jobs. And I think it's particularly important, similar to Squash Dreamers, to have local staff who understand their students, and we continue to train people. We also run social enterprises. So one's our Alsama studio, which is a bunch of lovely Syrian and Palestinian artwork, and we continue to keep on taking on new women. We educate them in English. So it's not just about the students, it's about the staff as well. And also it's giving these people income so children can go to school. Because if not, children will be left to pick plastic, potentially end up in gangs, drug dealers, just for income. So it's so important that we continue to support the parents, the staff in the refugee camps, to keep teaching the students, to keep our students safe as well. But yeah, it's a really difficult situation, especially in Lebanon at the moment with everybody moving around. But we hope with emergency funding we'll be able to still continue teaching, the teachers can have their income, and our students can have their education.
Thank you. I think your question is a really important one. And I think it's very difficult to answer, because I think it's really difficult to support people who are working and seeing trauma every day. I mean, I know I mentioned me being in America and being here. I'm going, oh, goodness. This is, I kind of forgot that this is how I felt when I was here. Very similarly to Alsama, we work with, our team is made up of people from Syria, Gaza, Palestine, Jordan, and we make sure that everyone is paid properly and paid well. It's really important to us. Unfortunately, sometimes the wages in Jordan can be a little bit low, and it's really important to us that people are able to not just sustain themselves, but are able to look after themselves and look after their families. So that's really, really important to us when we're working with our local staff and, well, everybody, making sure that everybody is paid well, so that they can look after themselves. The other thing is, so at Squash Dreamers, we're relatively small. And what's great is we have an amazing team of people. And I'll be honest, quite often after the girls go home, we'll sit in the centre and we'll have a cup of tea and be like, so what did you see today? So what happened with you today? And we'll have a long conversation and kind of talk about how we're feeling. Because at the end of the day, you know, the people who work with us are doing it because they care a lot about the girls. But sometimes, you know, even when you have a lot of care, that trauma and that intensiveness of every single day, you know, is a little bit too much. And so in response to your question, what do I think that people can be doing to support? Number one, funding is super important. It's super important for smaller community-based organizations. As Alsama, I believe we rely 100% on donations and donations from American family foundations. But number two, I think it's really important to kind of like look at this holistic model of how we're supporting people, right? So one of the issues that I often face in Jordan is that my work does not stop at executive director. My work bleeds over into social worker. My work bleeds over into supporting victims and witnesses of domestic violence. So I think it's really important when we're looking at empowering young people that we look at every different corner of society. I think it's really important to be looking at general well-being for young people. I think it's really important to be pushing for better when it comes to social support and when it comes to family protective services, for example, in Jordan. And so I guess in response to your question, I don't have all the answers because even myself, I'm not doing it 100% well all of the time. I find it really difficult, as do our staff. But I think it's really important to remember that in humanitarian work, it is humane and we're doing it because we're humans. And so it's looking and going, wow, I found that really tough today. I'm going to have a long sleep tomorrow morning. Or let me go out with this member of staff and we can have a little bit of a chat about what we've just been seeing and have a little bit of a cry and get over it together. And so I'm open to hear everyone else's opinions on it. And I think funding and advocacy for better services across the board is really, really important because I know that if we had better support, for example, at family protective services, my job would be a lot easier.
If I may, in a world and time of incessant negativity, 24-hour news cycles, and incredibly dehumanizing language for refugees, I can't tell you how encouraged and enthused I have been this morning to hear your passion. And thank you for telling the stories that you've told us. I think storytelling is so powerful and so important in the public policy space. I have two questions. Earlier this year, Refugee Voices here in the city did an event, and one of the sort of common threads there were the individuals that had obviously reached out into those lives to help them understand their own innate dignity and the options. I think you used the word, the choice they have ahead of them, which is absolutely brilliant. We've had work through the Afghan refugee scheme, and you both touched on it briefly. I just wanted to understand the connections that you build with families and communities for these young women and how you sort of build support for their education and for their future. Clearly, there's a desire for them to have a better one. One of the big battles that we've had with that program has been a sort of reluctance from wider families, a sort of keeping young people very close, not really wanting them to be exposed. And I just wonder, I realize it's a different context, but just potential parallels there. And the second is working with our family of schools. We have a number of children of refugees. We're beginning to understand a lot more about epigenetics and intergenerational trauma, but many of them very disconnected from their parents and their wider family stories, and obviously now beginning to see the effects of those shadows through time. But many of those young people really looking for a place or a contact point to rejoin that story. So very interested in obviously the news and what's happening. And one of the projects I've worked on with a charity I help run in Eswatini has been to connect young people between the UK and in-country who share historical heritage and to some degree linguistic links. I just wonder whether or not you see that as a scope for connections with schools between the UK and Lebanon and Jordan. I obviously realize there'd need to be technological or some sort of bridge built there, but I just wanted to know your sort of thinking on whether or not that would be a goer.
Thank you so much for your question. Your work sounds incredibly interesting, and I hope we have a chance to chat a little bit later. I'm going to start with your second question to begin with, which I think is fantastic work with what you're doing with connecting people. Now, interestingly enough, in Jordan, we get loads of people coming out to study Arabic. and we have loads and loads of different language schools in Amman in Jordan, and we get loads of those volunteers who come to Squash Streamers to come and volunteer. Often we have people who are of Syrian or Jordanian or Palestinian heritage who will come out to Jordan because they're studying Arabic, wanting to reconnect a little bit with their language, and they come and volunteer at Squash Streamers. And I think it's a really important experience for both our girls and the volunteers who come. For our girls, it's a great opportunity. I mean, it's I'll be honest, it's often quite funny because the girls go, hold on, wait a minute, she said she was from Palestine, why isn't her Arabic very good? And you have to go, no, don't say that, that's not very nice. But I think it's a great opportunity for everyone because I think it's a great cross-cultural exchange to go, I'm Palestinian, but I grew up in America, or I'm Syrian, but I grew up in the UK. I would love to collaborate if you're looking for opportunities for students of Syrian, Palestinian, Sudanese backgrounds. We actually do a lot of online mentoring. So we have people that set up Zoom calls, and we'll do online mentoring with some of our older students to help them with their English and general timekeeping and planning, etc., etc. So I think it's really, really important, and we've seen the impact that it can have on both sides with us. With regards to your first question, now, interestingly enough, when I went back to Squash Streamers in 2021 in the September, I went out with this lovely lady called Shadia who does all of our community liaison, who's from Syria herself, and we wanted to bring on more girls because when I started we had 7 girls, and we went out into the community and we're going door to door speaking to these different families who'd said that they might be interested, and I was saying, look, you know, we want your daughter to come, we want to help her with her academics, we're going to play squash. Now squash doesn't have a word in Arabic, it is squash. Which shows you how well known it is, kind of even just in Jordan. So I'm saying to people, let me take your daughter on a bus to this location in the middle of Amman. We're going to do squash, this sport you've never heard of, and we're going to do academics. And as you can assume, people went, no, thank you. And so it took a period of time of kind of building trust with the community. Now, Shadia, who's our community liaison lady, who's from Syria herself, was key in this, because people looked and went, okay, well if Shadia trusts this person, then we can trust them with our daughters. And obviously it's quite difficult because we work in very conservative communities within Amman. And the second part of that was, now we have the opposite problem. So we started with 7 girls and we were trying to build up and trying to bring more girls in. We now have 55 girls and we have 150 girls on our waiting list. Now, we don't do any recruitment anymore, because the girls do all of our recruitment for us. So we have people calling us up, sending emails, trying to get in touch, because they're saying, okay, who are these young people in our community, number one, who are the top of their class at school, who are playing really high-level sport, who are going on to these opportunities and getting scholarships to go to the UK and abroad, but most importantly, who are these young girls who are confident and happy. And unfortunately, quite often in the communities that we work with, that's not a super common thing to see. So I guess kind of my advice, if you like, or what I would say from my experience at Squash Streamers, is that it takes time to build connections with people. I think language is really, really important. If I speak to somebody in English, they're like, okay, I understand what you've said, but I don't feel a connection with you. If I speak to somebody in Arabic, then they're much more likely to trust me, the same way that perhaps I would if I was speaking to somebody as well. The second part of that is obviously Shadia, who does a lot of community work. She's incredible. And the third part is that the girls have become the shining lights of our program. And we do work with people still where they'll say, okay, my daughter will come and she'll study English, but she won't play sports. And it's a slow process of going, okay, well, let's try a bit of this, let's try a bit of that. But if you don't want to do sports, that's also totally fine. And we've adapted our program based on the needs of the community. And that's another reason why it is so important for us to every single time turn around to our community and go, what do you need? Because I'm not just about to impose what I think is important. It's really important for us to listen to what you need. And then when the community realizes and goes, okay, you are supporting kind of what we need, and you are supporting the girls to go on to better opportunities. That's the point at which we've formed these incredible links. And I know I'm talking loads, but the last thing I wanted to say was we invest in our families too. So we have the girls coming in 5-6 times a week. And then once every 2 months, we do like a big family dinner. So we'll invite all the families in. The families are welcome to ask any questions of any staff. We sit around, we all have food together. It's really lovely. And it builds that community space. And it's less of, okay, us offering a service or a service being offered. It's like, oh, no, we're all here. And somebody, so-and-so's mum is teaching this volunteer how to say this in Arabic. And I'm learning about how to cook this nice thing from this person. And so it builds this really amazing community.
And, sorry, going to have to be a short. No, you can answer. I want you to respond because we want every voice to be heard. But it's just going to have to be a shorter answer because I thought we were going to struggle with timings. But wow, how amazing you guys have done. So thank you. And if you would like to respond to the question.
Yeah. Thank you for your response. Your family dinners sound like an amazing way to enjoy the community. And thank you for your question. It'd be great to discuss more later. But as brief answers, firstly to the second question. At Alsama, as well as the internship I mentioned, which is what I did, we also do projects. So you can either go to Beirut for a few months or you can do it online. So I'm actually, now that I'm back, I'm doing a project now. So my background's in medicine, and I know there's so many students out there that want to do medicine, but applications to university to medicine is so complicated and so difficult that I'm running a course to help these students get into medicine. Everything from interviews to preparing for the entrance exams. I know other interns have, projects involve teaching students professional skills from SCAD and lawyers, for example. That's what they do, as well as like other people randomly teaching the students how to do photography, how to play chess. So there's so many opportunities to get involved, and our students love learning new things. And answer to your first question, yes, community is everything at Alsama. So we're based in the refugee camps themselves. So without the blessing of the community, we can't be there. So we're only there under the protection of the community because the refugee camps are very much ran by different factions and that are not governmental at all. So we're only there under their blessing. So some things that we do is again, similar to Squash Dreamers, we're completely oversubscribed, and we're trying to build our model to get as many people into education as we can. That's by expanding ourselves, and we're also building a franchise model, and we're aiming to reach 10,000 students through the franchise model by 2029. And it's this difficult with families and the community, so we've also had students receive scholarships to study in the UK, and the families just be like, no, we're not allowing this to happen. And it's so difficult, but it's a lot of bringing them into the school, chatting about what this experience will be, getting all the right documents is also so difficult. But it's all just about collaboration. So ultimately, the family that didn't let their student go to the scholarship now have now said, actually, 2 years later, okay, our student can take the scholarship in the UK, which is amazing. But I think these things take time, understanding, just talking, really being part of the community, not just some separate organisation. So parents are always welcome to come and discuss, and a lot of them also work at the school. Yeah, it's basically all about collaboration, and things take time. So it might be a student can't go on a scholarship straight away, but in 2 years' time, the families may be convinced. But over time, as more students take scholarships, they come back to the refugee camps, they talk about their successes, more and more students keep joining. And same with the cricket hubs, they're completely oversubscribed as well, but we're continuing to build as fast as we can to support all of these students the best way we can. Thank you.
Wow. So thank you so much. Round of applause for our panelists. Amazing work, inspirational work. And never apologize for being passionate about making a big difference in the world. So, I really wanted to just acknowledge that. So what we're going to do, if it's okay with everybody, we're going to take a little 5-minute break, grab yourself some water, grab yourself a tea or a coffee, and if you come back, and then we'll be coming back for the next panel.